So this one actually isn't in the BFI top 100 British films of the 20th century, though I chose to view it again anyway. I was in the mood to. And I wouldn't have anticipated myself to be so, because I have to be honest, when I first saw Naked, I wound up really not liking the film. I was 19 when I first saw Naked. I was so hyped to see it. It seems like the ultimate package, a 90s edgy, existential film about a loner, witty protagonist, gritty England. The new millennium is approaching. I love train spotting. I really like Tarantino, certainly about 90s era. And so Naked seemed like it would be the best of them. The film of these which had the adulation of a world cinema classic, as though it were directed by Wong Kar-wai, Lars von Trier, or Abbas Kiarostami. It held a reputation among those who liked those particular films and turned their nose up at other edgy 90s films, And so I saw Naked, I was loving it, and then I came to apparently realize how, in many ways, Naked was the kind of film I would like to make, and I saw in it all the pitfalls, or many, that I would make, or that it felt as though, especially being in my first year of university, others would adamantly critique me on, and where I might agree where missteps or blind spots in the handling of the characters in this fetishistically nihilistic narrative could be. I was bothered by a scene wherein Johnny was elated at the prospect of being allowed to paste posters over a large brick wall. I didn't like the whole, oh, Johnny just could have used a job, the poor guy, implication of that. Whether Leigh intended or thought that or not, it still seemed to imply this. Also, it seemed very uncharacteristic that Johnny, who we've spent most of the movie amongst, would seem excited at the prospect of carrying out a mundane job. Oh, this is better than the void. But Johnny was deriding everyone else for working, implying he didn't want to work. He would rather do what he's doing, so why would he go, oh, cheers, when the guy offered him to join him in his job, rather than laughing him off, saying, nah, mate, I don't work, I'm not a slave, I'm a person, man, or whatever. Maybe Johnny doesn't have to be consistent. He isn't. I just felt unsure, kind of to this day, what the narrative implication of Johnny's enthusiasm for that job was meant to be, even if it was just temporary. I don't understand why Leigh wrote it as such. Maybe he didn't think about it. It just threw the film's purported purpose, if any, out of whack. It occurred to me that the film was trying to make Johnny likable, not in a way that would shake the audience and make themselves anguish at the prospect that they enjoyed Johnny's company, an antisocial abuser and rapist, but more in a way that they see elements of their own anhedonic malaise in Johnny. If I had made Naked, it would occur to me, concern me, that the finished product might make 15-year-olds think Johnny is actually cool. Whose fault is that? That audience's or Mike Leigh's? The artist's. I don't know for sure. I'm willing to hear opinions on this. Watching Naked now, I do love the screenplay, or the idea of it, and the cinematographic philosophy as displayed via these screen caps is so extraordinary. One of the most exciting acts of film photography of the 1990s, I could say. The way they realise a dusty, nighttime, grungy city metropolis ought to be the envy of world cinema auteurs with any similar intent. So what do we make of Johnny, then? Or the characters in general, a series of maybe caricaturish portrayals of ugly kitchen sink sufferers, nasty bullies, defeated dreamers, and aggressive depressives. I don't know if I would call Naked's depiction of human behaviour truly realistic. It is difficult to imagine the contents of Naked playing out in a fly-on-the-wall verite documentary, likely as not, although they function as higher abstracted archetypes of our own fears of inevitable human actions and behaviours. It is assumed that people like those in Leigh's Naked exist whether we have ever met them or not, because the human species is so wicked and fallible. The world is an ugly, unforgiving place. Why wouldn't Naked be considered an honest portrayal of what could occur in our shared reality? Because Naked inevitably maybe romanticizes a nihilism toward the modern world, a disdain for the circumstances of the developed world as of the early 1990s, and a probable desire to see its total destruction at the turn of the new millennium. Naked offers Johnny's confidence as a charismatic ideal, as a prospective pop philosopher of the 20th century's twilight years, summing up the results of a rather riveting vocabulary and a self-assured insistence which is admittedly quite captivating and compelling in the moment itself. I think it is because we can see how, if we just met Johnny and didn't know anything else about him, we would like him. That security guard liked him, Sophie initially found him very charming, Louise was willing to give him a second chance. We see and know Johnny is, as a thief, an abuser, a rapist. Maybe if we treat him with anything but disgust and disdain, it is on us? Why treat Johnny as being any more likeable than Jeremy/Sebastian on principle? I do not know. Johnny cons us all a bit too. And so Mike Leigh's Naked I consider an extraordinary accomplishment of film direction and cinematography, and on paper the script is really very good. Somehow in literature it is easier to imagine an author coldly portraying Johnny's entire scope of behaviour in the narrative and not inherently romanticising it compared to a flashy film portrayal, you know. That's the thing. In execution, Johnny Fletcher is moulded and positioned as too much of a Holden Caulfield, countercultural romantic, and maybe the 90s was just that edgy and clinically cold, ruthless, and post-human that we could throw away all attempts at morality and come up with strange, provocative, abstract reasonings for hedonistic human behaviour so that one could consider Johnny a really cool guy or consider illustrating him as a really cool guy. Honestly, if I were responsible for Naked, that tension as to whether the glorification, any glorification of Johnny is my fault as the artist or the audience's fault, I couldn't help but feel the insecure artist and blame myself. Now, Kubrick felt as though Clockwork Orange may have inspired some copycat crimes, and so he pulled it from distribution in the UK, though I'm sure no one considers A Clockwork Orange to be truly glorifying violent behaviours. It is depicted as horrific and gross, very distinct from the stylized violence of, for example, the pictures of the 1990s, which were peers of Leigh's Naked. If I had directed A Clockwork Orange, somehow I would feel, maybe this is pure speculation and nonsense, you'd feel confident that I could claim to my critics, no, I am clearly not glorifying violence, no more than Anthony Burgess was. I'm just depicting human ugliness in order to make a point about the philosophical extremes of human will and rehabilitation and technology's relationship with this. I don't feel this about Naked in the hypothetical, not to the same degree. Alex in A Clockwork Orange became an iconic character because he was scary, intimidating, a horror movie icon of sorts. Johnny from Naked became a quasi-iconic character because he was, well, considered likeable and rather witty. Leigh's idea for Naked and most of the execution is exemplary, though I think that the depiction of Johnny is very rooted, stuck, only really can be imagined as viable in the edgy, end of history 1990s. It was the cinematic equivalent of Britain's in-your-face theatre movement, and figures such as Mark Ravenhill, and like that era of strange stage productions, there was little motivation to continue with it when we decided there was enough misery in the world and that we ought to try and be more optimistic and improve it in the 21st century. Gutter nihilism is only so useful or valid a position in the 21st century, some could definitely argue. Though as a cultural artifact, Naked fascinates me, that late 20th century pathos, the concept of setting a film in 1993 London in a universe where the world will end at the dawn of 2000. It is a very interesting piece of history, maybe for a novelty function or purpose. Share thoughts on Mike Leigh's Naked below. Too immoral, wholly insightful, or simply overhyped wank? I'd argue a bit of all three. It comes across as a script, or at least plot synopsis, written by someone under 35, and Leigh was indeed rather young when he had the idea for Naked initially in the early 1960s, although perhaps he didn't imbue enough of his attained wisdom to correct what comes across as juvenile oversights in the execution of the film's screenplay. And I'm under 35, just to be clear. Like, I'm speaking as this from a takes one to know one, right? But I'm just like, wait, Leigh was like older. Like, I'm surprised how old, whatever. Sometimes I feel surprised more people don't come out, especially given the alleged social climate we live in now, and condemn or cancel or whatever Naked for glorifying a vile rapist. And maybe that is because everyone has forgot about Naked, or maybe we realise that the film does have so much going for it otherwise that maybe it has something of value or merit to say about its abhorrent subjects. Maybe. I'm not absolutely sure though. I'll leave this one open to the comments to decide.